Hello and welcome to Radical Engagement here at Varn Blog. Today we're going to talk about the Uneasy Oligarchy by Jamie Merchant. Now, oligarchy invocations have become popular on the liberal left. We've seen both Bernie Sanders and AOC do a tour around this. We have seen attempts by various progressive influencers on TikTok and Instagram to bring up and make the brocialarchy stick as a way to critique the tech oligarchy. Of course, not mentioning that said brocialarchy was actually created by policies as much embraced by Barack Obama and the first half of the Biden administration as by anything on the right. I mean, after all, what really enabled Elon Musk to become the richest man in the world wasn't Tesla, it was SpaceX giving government deals. And what really enabled Bezos to really become super profitable wasn't just Amazon's massively undercutting its competition, but also it getting government services with its AWS services, which is actually more where Amazon's money comes from than its retail chain. Populism and the attack of the oligarchy is usually just a propping up of a counter oligarchy for a false populism. This is true on the right and the left. It's an easy thing to invoke. It's a demagogic thing to invoke. But oligarchies are also very real. They just tend to play all sides. After all, it's easier to control everybody when you're controlling everybody's purse strings. But I wanted to get into where we are with the new barbarians at the gate. Jamie Merchant in July of this year wrote an article for the Baffler. Now, Merchant is a friend of our sister show, The Antifada, and I like a lot of his work. So I wanted to cover this and maybe some responses to it, but it's something to deal with. And it does show you how far we have come / degenerated / how the millennial left, whatever the fuck that is, has failed. Now, I've talked about the millennial left failure this entirety of the show, but in some ways, if you think about the conditions of Occupy on every single issue that they cared about, the situation has either stalled in terms of mass racial equity. There's a more diverse elite now, but that's really the only thing that's changed. Or outright failed. The revival of the labor unions actually started to slow down and pretty much collapsed after Occupy. Labor unions are more popular than they've ever been, but as I've now said for 4 years, no one joins them in mass, and the new ones and the new labor union movements are in shops. It would be very, very small. So they're treading water when they have to grow. Believe it or not, right before Occupy Wall Street, during the beginning to return from the situation of both after 9/11 and after the Great Recession, we actually saw a mild uptick in labor unions, and as part of the population density hole. So labor union density actually went up. That has not been true since probably Occupy Wall Street. So this image on the Baffler invoking Occupy Wall Street and its big old bull, in a way, reminds us how utterly failed this is, but it's also a reminder of that financial oligarchy in the first place. So let's go into Merchant's article and see how it goes. Jamie Merchant, The Uneasy Oligarchy, July 8th, 2025. And given how scattershot everything is in America right now, we know that probably everything in this has already changed. Only a few months into the second Trump administration, it looks like some in the money class is suffering from buyer's remorse. I mean, Tim Cook still brought him some weird identity politics, right-wing identity politics gold bar made by a Marine or something. So I'm not sure they really do. Seems like more of a sad, pathetic bending of the knee. The president's fixation on trade imbalances threatens to upend long set patterns of commerce and investment. Not threaten, it now is. Those chickens are coming home to roost. They didn't come home immediately as the progressives on TikTok were screaming, but they are coming home. Everyone's hoping that the Americans' inability to think for more than, say, 2 weeks is going to make this an easier sell, just like when people at the Bulwark screamed that Biden had the best economy ever, even though it was not trickling downward and they did not seem to care. Sowing anxiety amongst investors with international ties whose wealth depends on a climbing stock market. You can juke the stock market. Whether one looks to the East Coast and to the old money of Wall Street or the new money of Silicon Valley and its techno-supremacist religion, are the big box barons who rule the American hinterlands. The creatures of corporate realm appear to be united in opposing Trump's trade war. I mean, who was giving the No Kings protest money? Walmart heirs. Thus, the pattern. Trump announces tariffs. His corporate patrons complain. He announces carve-outs and rollbacks, leaving an uneven, patchy landscape of enforcement, a kind of rule by retraction, which is leading a lot, by this point, not so much when this was written, but now, it's leading a lot of countries just to opt out of even dealing with us because they can't figure out our regulations. The administration's on-again, off-again tariff campaign has whiplash markets and confounded many of Trump's wealthy backers and hopeful admirers. Billionaire investors like Bill Ackerman join multi-international corporations like Apple and Walmart in their complaints. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, figurehead for the big banks, has warned that Trump's erratic policies are going to hurt U.S. growth. That is to say, they will hurt corporate profits. Even Elon Musk, who managed to sell a Tesla to Trump in March, wants it lowered tariffs and has, at least for the moment, broken with Trump's Republican Party. Not really. He was giving them money while he was opposing them on Facebook. What he was trying to do was save stock value. Has Musk become frustrated with Trump and moved away from it? Absolutely. And I think they got frustrated with him too. But I think you should read that more carefully, Jamie. In July, maybe it was less obvious. Trump's dithering around trade policy poses a real risk for the profits of American multinational business and billionaires. Even more than tariffs themselves, the fact they're not consistent is a problem. The president's mafia-like attack on the rule of law is just as worrisome for big business. Trump's Department of Justice is investigating major law firms who seek or have worked with his political enemies, demanding to end government dealings with any corporations that would hire them. In March, both Trump and Musk called for the impeachment of judges who ruled against the administration. That's not new. Leading Republicans in Congress are introducing articles of impeachments against several federal judges. Trump appointees have interfered with prosecutions, like that of New York Mayor Eric Adams, and have fired government lawyers en masse. Overall, the current government pushes away from the business climate where the rules are clear towards legal criticism and an ad hoc arrangements favoring whoever will do the regime's bidding. Although they're not even consistent on that. That's one of the maddening things. But anyway. At first glance, it may seem like a clash between big corporations and an overly activist Trump state, but for businesses, there's always a benefit to the balance of costs. The Department of Government Efficiency wills the acts of austerity against the federal bureaucracy as part of a larger agenda of corporate deregulation long dreamt of by conservative business elite. And of course, mass tax cuts for the rich are included in the 1,000-page bill that emerged from Congress on July 3rd. In fact, that's really the best thing that emerged from it as far as they're concerned. Trump has already speculated that tariff revenues could allow the federal income tax to be abolished entirely. You're not going to see that, at least not yet. And of course, those revenues diminish if he cuts deals to lower tariffs, or if the tariffs push consumers to buy fewer import products, which we are seeing beginning to happen. Though the very contradictions Trump's second coming can make him appear to be everything to everyone, a populist America First firebrand to the MAGA base, a staunchly pro-business typical Republican with a mania for deregulation that pleases the corporate sector, and a bold innovator practicing the kind of personalized rule idealized by Valley megalomaniacs. Right-wing influencers held Trump 2.0 as the base crusade, delivering the country from the woke mob. Maybe the new regime can even rebuild the country's industrial base while they're at it. No, they can't. They'd be automated. It wouldn't work the same way. And also, they've hurt our trade partners so bad that we have a worse trade deficit now with more manufacturing job losses here in September than we did before they came in. This is just an economic reality, but Merchant couldn't know this in July. But there are fault lines visible in the oligarchy. Trump's public comments threatened steep tariff for companies like Apple and Mattel, whose One Beautiful Bill Act, a disgusting abomination in Elon Musk's words, prompted the disillusioned billionaires to sulk away from the challenges of decimating the federal government. While tech moguls like Musk and crypto operators imagine radical change, the powerful forces in Wall Street would prefer to return to a corporate status quo. They actually clearly did in the election in the first place, by the way. While they all cozied up to Trump relatively quickly and thoroughly, particularly to avoid people like Linda Kahn, it is also clear that they gave the Democrats more money than they gave the Republicans this last time around. We can trace these tensions by looking at the evolution of finance over the last 15 years. From the grand financial crisis of 2008 to the return of inflation in late 2021, the U.S. Federal Reserve favored a policy of easy money. More than a decade of low to zero interest rates and a flood of wealthy, newly printed dollars made funding cheap and abundant. A great deal of it flowed into curiosities that get the most media attention, cryptocurrencies, because what else are you going to invest in when returns are that low? NFTs, meme coins, and other alternative assets that thrive in the personalized app world of fintech. But beneath the surface, a tectonic shift unfolded within the financier class from publicly held companies to a nouveau riche of private ownership. A tsunami of cheap loans and free-flowing investment of capital minted tens of thousands of new millionaires across the country. It did. That's just a fact. It fueled an explosion in privately held companies and high net worth individuals. One of the main effects was to further concentrate wealth and income at the very top of American society in the hands of the most self-flattering ignoramuses. And honestly, this was a bipartisan thing. Trump 1 did this, Biden did this, Obama did this. They didn't all do it the same way, nor can you say that they're equal to each other, although such questions are just, at this point, either whataboutism or flattening or denial. The equality question on these kinds of policies is frankly going to always be misleading. Back to the text. Consider again Bill Ackman, CEO of hedge fund of Pershing Square Capital Management, one of the most prominent plutocrats backing Trump. Part takeover artist of the classic Wall Street mode and part new money upstart. The one-time supporter of Democratic candidates and Harvard alum. All these anti-Harvard people are all from fucking Harvard. The Ivy League, it's funny. Rose to prominence in the recovery from the 2008 meltdown. The big bad alpha wolf of hedge fund guys, to use Washington Post terms, distinguished himself with one of the most disastrous hedge fund investments of all time in the pharmaceutical company Valeant, losing nearly $4 billion by the time his fund sold its remaining shares in 2017. Later, the activist investor took an embarrassing L to the tune of $1 billion in a big, highly publicized bet against the dietary supplement company Herbalife. Yet Trump, like Trump, he's mastered the art of failing upward. Ackman embodied a long-term trend in American finance. Over time, more and more money has pooled in the hands of private financiers like him, regardless of how successful they actually were in their business ventures. That's actually important. While the number of the publicly listed companies have fallen, even ones that they've touched, it's me adding that, but it's something to note. It's the Lou Welsh model of short-term finance investment. But as a general tendency, fewer investors and owners are opting to take their companies public, while private equity firms convert many thousands of publicly traded companies into privately held assets, which are also tied into your pension and your 401k. And so if you hurt these private equity sectors, even though they are basically rating assets, you will hurt your retirement fund. So there's a reason why it's hard to go after them. This privatization of the private sector, as Doug Hidwood describes it, has empowered a new generation of financiers who shirk responsibility, or financiers, who shirk responsibility to shareholders or regulatory concerns that come with them. It's little Trumps everywhere. The great petite bouffalification of the market was one of the weird side effects of neoliberalism, as Nico Villarreal has pointed out. That's me adding that, but it's important. People think it was that neoliberalism was just returning to laissez-faire of the 19th century, which wasn't true in the 19th century either. But it wasn't that. It was public funds used for private investment and then balkanizing big companies and turning people into contractors rather than employees to break up any allegiances or abilities to organize. And I'm not sure that it was planned that way, although parts of it clearly were. That was its effect. The private fund industry is emblematic. Private funds is a catch-all term for venture capital, hedge funds, and private equity firms. The petty tyrants of finance capital. These interests grew explosively during the Biden years. Yep, and I pointed this out, and this is why a lot of people who would say Biden had the envy of economy, if you were rich or upper well off, like most liberals were. If you were not, you got hit by inflation, and then you got hit by stagnating wages. And while there were some minor corrections towards the very end of Biden's term, and clearly he was running things more responsibly than Trump was, or his handlers were, he wasn't running much shit, as we later found out. But nonetheless, both sides have been trying to gaslight people about the economy. Actually, we should say Biden was trying to gaslight us and make us feel insane. We're complaining about it, and so was his liberal elites, because they were looking at the stats and then ignoring the distribution of those stats. They just were. But then you have the Trumpists who are just outright lying to you straight-faced, trying to hide the numbers outright. So here you go. All right. Assets held by these funds grew 34% to nearly 28 trillion, almost matching the 31 trillion held on public mutual funds, historically the much bigger type of ownership. The number of private funds grew at an even faster rate, from about 63,000 in 2020 to 101,000 in 2024. Company founders and investment partnerships multiplied by the thousands. They formed the financial shock troops of a new American gentry, the upper class backbone of Trumpism, the one that's even higher than its petite bourgeois backbone, many of which may be falling out over this. The backing of Trump is actually different now than in 2016 to 2020, and this has actually hurt a lot of left-wing narratives. One, there's probably is more organic working class composition to the Trump base, but also the opposition to him amongst the working class has probably increased as well, because it's hit more of them. But the tech funds and a lot of the quote PMC elite changing sides, at least if they aren't public sector, is a new thing. This base tends to be less complacent than the older financial establishment. Sorry, Better Business Bureau Republicans, which not only wants order and stability in the national markets, but also, at least for a time, publicly supported the ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I always thought that was a marketing ploy, and I think even most liberals thought it was a marketing ploy, but then liberals thought maybe the marketing ploy was progressive in of itself. The thing is, these things have a kind of metabolic breath that reeks of death. Once you've excluded one market, you have to go back and include the market you priorly excluded. It makes you look incoherent. And the reptilian cortex of the so-called disruptors like Musk, woke capital is led by its standard bearer, BlackRock. As the globe's largest asset management firm, BlackRock has historically worked closely with the U.S. Federal Reserve, particularly after Barack Obama people and the Treasury, to carry out policies and engineer bank bailouts on the government's behalf. This is why even when they attack oligarchs, the Democrats can't really go after them that hard. They created conditions for things like BlackRock to really emerge. It's especially close to the Democratic Party. Yes, it is. Thank you, Jamie. Its CEO, Larry Fink, was prepared to accept a role as Treasury Secretary in the Hillary Clinton administration before the demise of that campaign in 2016. With close connections to the federal bureaucracy, BlackRock is seen as a prime commercial and ideological enemy of the right-wing finance. For example, its associations with environment, society, and governments, ESG guidelines, which are just an investment scheme to secure returns like any other, prompted Musk to label BlackRock policies as communism rebranded. Slogans aside, though, the real targets of investors like Musk is the 10 trillion that is in managed funds currently invested through BlackRock and the lucrative government partnerships supporting its profit and power. Likewise, in his techno-optimist manifesto, the Ovaltine venture capitalist Mark Andreessen, that's funny, also identifies sustainability as one of the current enemies of progress derived from communism. Deriving shit from communism is like these guys' favorite pastime. They want their Cold War back because it justifies all kinds of investments in large government. Mid 20th century US reactionary shit. It's hard to bring back, and they know it. Right. He alludes to the same state corporate complex that Musk and others radicalized right-wing capitalists see as a real villain, a bureaucracy devoted to central planning, which restricts the techno-capital machine, the engine of perpetual creation, growth, and abundance. Along the financial fry corps of private investors, fund managers, and activist shareholders see the Trump administration as a battering ram to smash the regulatory wall that guarding the big money, i.e. the enormous pools of savings managed by government-connected funds and banks. This includes, for example, some $8 trillion in invested retirement accounts, as well as bigger shares of roughly $6.1 trillion pool of public pension assets. Even Trump's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, complains about the alleged central planning under Democratic governments and talks about the need to increase competition and reduce the power of market incumbents, by which he means opening the door to this vault for him and his colleagues. For the financiers backing the Trump raid on big finance could yield a jackpot of billions. And these people are open raiders now. There's no question about that. We see the GOP doing this too, even at the expense of their long-term political viability. Of course, this is all presented to the public eye as a holy war on the left. As is often the case, the most debased episode of the entire culture war are the actual spasms of a profits war. When faction of the ruling class feels frozen out and sees opportunity to weaponize the state against its current enemies from within the ruling class. Jamie is absolutely right. So much of this populism, complaints about oligarchy, is just a different form of oligarchy trying to either maintain power or assert itself. It sees the masses as a kind of mass of rubes that can be manipulated into one side or the other. On the outs are the Democratic elites like Larry Summers and the university he once presided over, Harvard, even though it's like half of the Trump administration has got Ivy League degrees. More than half. Faces of the state finance establishment like Larry Fink and Jeremy Diamond are sidelined while a new team of opportunists is called to the field. This is not a takeover of the government by oligarchs. It is an aspiring oligarchy overthrowing an old one by seizing governmental power. They're both empowered by geriatric politicians too. It's so fucking funny. Merchant is completely right about this. It's hilarious, but also it's going to make you very poor. Trump's alignment with the insurgent finance and tech monopolists has opened up a broader Cold War in the capitalist class. His economic base has afforded him the freedom to act with dubious policies both at home and abroad, including tariffs, tax cuts, reckless slashing of government agencies. But his support is bound to shrink if his policies unleash a new round of inflation or if an economic downturn results in bankruptcies and plunging corporate profits. And we are seeing some of this now. Both the inflation and beginnings of a downturn are clear, but is it going to hurt corporate profits a lot yet? That's yet to be seen, although it looks like it's going to hit a dent. Maybe not as bad as Democrats wanted. Naturally, this creates an irresistible opportunity for Democrats to do what they do best, inching closer to the Republican position while selling themselves as the less extreme. Yeah, we see this all over the place right now. Hence why they're all calling Trump a communist. It's fucking pathetic. The more chaotic Trump 2.0 is, the more Democratic moderates will push to the position of the party as a responsible, stable party of business. We definitely see that. And the more appealing they will be in the eyes of that class, which is what they did during the first Trump term, honestly. Big finance in particular will be keen to squash the techno-optimist revolt, and they probably won't be able to do that through the Republicans. The party is too committed to the chainsaw demolition set in motion by Musk and that techno-libertarianism advocated by Andreessen. This set up a vicious political cycle. MAGA radicalizes the Republican Party with the support of an insurgent faction of the corporate class, prompting more status quo oriented business interests to align with the Democrats. The Democrats are further lobotomized by the influence of those interests. They even try to like make up new constituencies for it. I mean, one of the things that you can laugh at is like, while astroturfing things like the Tea Party and stuff was astroturfed, although they had probably organic roots, they did actually speak to people in a way that a lot of like centrist Democrats' attempts to astroturf things with influence and whatnot really don't. But maybe they're hoping that um, Gavin Newsom doing Trump pantomime through his press office will jingle the keys for everybody long enough for things to return to the status quo without them doing jack and shit. Them being the Democrats, that is. Their campaign even made more torpid, bereft of content, and the working class is left without any representation besides Republican appeals to American first economic warfare, which doesn't help them, but at least like immobilizes them with bullshit, and delusions of industrial grandeur, which aren't going to come because even if you do reindustrialize, it'll be with robots, you dumb fucks. Workers continue to exit mainstream political life, which is what they've been doing since the fucking 60s. This is Varn talking, not Merchant, but I'm sure Jamie knows this. Politics is reduced to the corporate battle for spoils with the state as its terrain. Emptied of democratic or working class meaning, mass politics involves in the mass conspiracism, which is happening on the left too these days. To me, that's actually a sign of how bad things are falling. It's not that there aren't conspiracies, there are many. But the kinds of conspiracies you see pitched are the dumber ones that require more and more people to be involved and somehow keep quiet, and then also somehow for you to figure it out, despite the fact that that doesn't make any sense. That you could that it could somehow keep that many people quiet that long, and you could just easily figure it out by reading tea leaves. All right. This means governing becomes more difficult no matter which party controls the White House. Stable governments require an understanding between the corporate world and its state institutions. And with the corporate elite mainly focused on business and competitive priorities, it is usually up to government actors to try to organize themselves into a coherent class whose interests can be aligned with the longer term strategic view of the state. The committee of the ruling class will smack around the ruling class sometimes because they want stability and they want the competition to remain relatively tame. Think about this as battles between nobles almost. But when things are really in true contestation and everyone's dependent more on the state, ironically, this becomes an even bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger project, and one that the stakes get higher and higher from. Trump's mixed messages are scrambling this project. The ruling class is not just at odds with the state, it's at war with itself. Absolutely. With separate factions vying for dominance over the class as a whole. Trump let the genie out of the bottle, as it were, that may prove difficult to contain. This will intensify the breakdown of mainstream politics. Yep, it will. This is why I'm advocating independence from the Democrats instead of trying to like take them over or whatever, because this is going to get harder to fight against from internal to the Democratic Party. Period. End of discussion. The berserker nationalism of the Republicans and the deepening legitimization crisis of political institutions, the basic tasks of governing the country become secondary to Trump's administrative goals. Indiscriminate cruelty towards disfavored groups, revenge on any remnants of the Democratic Party's liberal wing, all while enriching themselves as a privileged clique of insiders at the public expense. I mean, Trump's net worth has gone up 70% since becoming president, mostly through meme coin. How does the larger business sector benefit from it? The situation is fluid, with a confluence of class forces swirling around Trump's return. Different industries may break in different directions. A closer look at MAGA 2.0's business coalition offers clues to how things might shake out. Unhurriedly, synergies characterize the regime's new corporate alliance, and its marquee policy, massive exportation, is a massive payout to the private prison and security industries. You know, already the largest landholders in the country, by the way. Next-gen defense technology contractors like Anduril are primed to profit immensely from the massive expansion of AI-based surveillance platforms like UAVs and autonomous sentry towers. AI-based facial recognition software will turn wrongful arrests into profits for companies like Clearview AI. A technological dystopia awaits that will make the wildest imaginings of William Gibson and Philip K. Dick look like children's bedtime stories. I mean, to be fair, they actually predicted some of this, but whatever. For a tech entrepreneurial elite out of ideas, Trump is just in time. The reactionary turn was born out of desperation. That I agree with. They kept on trying to use all the stuff that worked for them during the Obama and even Trump 1 days during the Biden administration. And while some of it helped, they generally could not innovate that much until they found LLM-based AIs got more efficient. We'll see how long that lasts. It's a good technology in some ways and a terrible one in others. I'm neither a doomer about AI nor a super promoter, but I can tell you right now, what is profitable by AIs is the building of tech centers to service them and the chips that go into them. NVIDIA is going to have problems with chips going to China because they really can't get enough in there. And the centers are going to have real power problems because the cost of power is going to go up and up, and private equity is probably going to get in on that too. So when you look at all that together, you have kind of a perfect storm of something that's going to like even eat at Silicon Valley's bottom line in the long run. But right now, it's going to lead to massive, Magnificent Seven stocks holding the stock market up, with NVIDIA basically being the main one holding most of it up because it actually produces a real commodity and it's not just wealth transfers in forms of rents to prop up companies that have not yet proved to be profitable. All right. After years later with the failed next big thing, Web 3.0, the Internet of Things. You remember the Internet of Things? I do. The metaverse, NFTs, and now potentially AI. We're saying that slow down, guys. Silicon Valley investors threw aside the pretense that they stood for something more noble than the mindless pursuit of profits. And they're not even that good at that. That's me adding that, but it's true. Compounded with the risk of regulation, Chinese competition, real competition down, not just fake ones, and foreign taxes on their hated platforms, it was easy for these champions of the free market to find their state as savior in Trump, or at least think they had. In this, we find the real reason behind the late political awakening. An even bigger prize awaits. Trump holds the key to the promised land, the federal defense budget. And we already see this with the integrations of large pit sectors of AI into the military. By the 2020s, the peerless innovation of the American capitalism was desperate for government handouts, literally begging the Pentagon to let them in, which is how they got that way in the 50s too, by the way, just so you know. Now, with partnerships between upstart defense tech firms like Anduril, Till-funded Palantir, SpaceX, and ChatGPT created OpenAI, making a play for government payouts with deceptive Department of Defense, now Department of War, the Valley is poised to cash out on its national defense, where profits fall from the sky like rain, displacing the military's prime contractors and enrich oligarchy that included names like Lockheed, Boeing, and Raytheon, which Trump may even threaten to nationalize now, but not the AI stuff. To grab a share of the ever-growing spend on the national defense may solve generative AI's main issue, profitability. OpenAI, for example, spent $9 million to make $4 billion in 2024. The AI revolution remains costly, unprofitable solutions in search of problem. Only NVIDIA is the only person really making a ton of money there, guys. But maybe the habitual optimists of the Valley will find their salvation through militarization. After they too will get the government bailout, and that's how they came to power in the first place. And Merchant needs to point that out. That's true for Musk. It gets worse. Planet destroying. Trump supporting oil and gas companies would naturally profit from the administration's fossil fuel fanaticism, even though it's not even in their great interest in the grid. But it's unclear whether or not they will be able to push extraction and production much past the record levels they've already reached by the Biden administration. Just in time, an exciting new opportunity presents itself, skyrocketing energy demand from insane overbuild of AI data centers. Yep. The bulk, 10% of our power grid goes to AI data centers right now, peeps. The bulk of which will go to fossil fuel suppliers. At the end of the day, Trump is a real estate magnate, not likely to forget his roots in the sector. With the former private equity executive William Pulte at the head, the Federal Housing Finance Agency is preparing to deliver a huge payday to finance insurance and real estate, the fire sectors, the parts of the PMC everyone forgets, by privatizing the Federal National Mortgage Association and the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The government-sponsored agencies that guarantee 70% of mortgages in a $50 trillion housing market. Such changes will likely drive mortgage rates even higher, delivering profits for the industry, like making life even more unaffordable for the majority. That includes all the rate costs on water and power too. Trump, the degrower, but still destroying the planet. Funny that. As Trump aims to deliver big for the parts of his coalition, there will be losers in the business world too, especially those who remain fixated on his hobby horses with trade imbalances, the way other countries are victimizing America, which he will. The U.S. car makers are heavily dependent on the North American supply chain and are key for new trade deals with Canada and Mexico. Without it, Trump's trade policy exposes them to severe risks. With no deal or carve-out that exempt import parts from tariffs, the U.S. auto industry, or what's left of it, will likely lose any enthusiasm they may have had for Trump-onomics, which we're already seeing that too. The outlook for agriculture is equally murky, aka bad, and without massive pay. I mean, Trump did this by massive payouts to farmers last time, and I don't know if he'll have the capacity to do it again, so it wasn't a big beautiful bill. Anyway, back to this. Well, Trump's policies have the support of a big slice of independent farmers and agribusinesses. His first term hurt small farmers significantly. Now tariffs are decimating the very family farms Trump claims to love. Firming up the support will require the administration to strike more deals, opening new markets for U.S. agriculture, which isn't currently happening, by the way, and more to the point, avoiding foreign retaliations that close them. Typical of Trump's priorities, he's already moved against several programs that are meant to help small farmers while pushing cuts to food stamps that help the poor as well as food producers. I mean, they do seem like they're really willing to destroy like large sections of capital to, I don't know, be jerks. For healthcare, one of the country's biggest and most complex industries, deregulation is the order of the day. Still stung from the failure to repeal the Affordable Care Act in Trump's first term, the regime wants to cut whatever else they can, especially new measures to push millions off Medicaid. This will be devastating for hospitals, especially in rural areas. I mean, Jamie's right, even though liberals do talk about this. And other providers that depend on government funding for their existence, some of which is already hitting now, but most of which is going to hit after 2026. Since hospitals, and Merchant isn't forgetting this, were the only prime drivers of growth in the economy right now as far as job growth, this is going to be bad. And that's why the job numbers got revised down this last month here in September. The cuts in Medicaid will endanger the health of the poor, as well as the healthcare sector that serves them. It may firm up the industry's traditional place in the democratic business space. But the political terrain is molten, shifting as the economic mammoth turns beneath it. Trump 2.0 could solidify a stable investor coalition if it manages to secure a new trade regime that calms the stock market, but it hasn't done that yet. Now, we're still early on, but it really hasn't. And now Trump seems to be moving to sending the National Guard to cities and making memes about the Department of War being turned on Chicago, which I do believe is a meme threatening a civil war, but nonetheless, that would require something Trump seems to dislike: stability. It all adds up to a mess of intensifying right-wing radicalization with worsening government dysfunction, complacent by an equally vacuous center, with the left being, fucking useless. All of these functions are useless, though. People pushing to the right as if this is somehow the end of neoliberalism, because I think neoliberalism just means international trade. Those people are fools too. Are they liars? Actually, probably more the latter. The journalist Cory Doctorow has provided a fitting all-purpose metaphor for this with his enshittification thesis. The rapid degradation of the information environment into unstable, bot-fed, infested trash as companies that own it metastasize into cancerous monopolies. Likewise, the journalist Ed Citron has extensively covered the rot economy, which hyper-financialized internet services exist to make as much money as possible for a handful of interviews by delivering worse, more unusable products. And I mean, they're also getting hit now with government bureaucracies in Europe and the UK that are making the internet kind of unusable. And we want to do it here too. And Biden already opened that up with the fucking weird ass TikTok man. A similar logic of enshittification has overtaken the two major parties. The Democrats evolved into a state party bloc whose main purpose was to deliver growth and asset values to its most powerful business partners. Yep. While trying and failing to pass off its program for general prosperity. And, that's why the neocons, not all of them, there are neocons in the Trump administration who love this Department of War shit. They're just the cruel, stupid, sadistic ones. But the smarter ones actually will try to tell you that the Biden economy was the envy of the world. Yeah. Trump's klepto state has openly dispensed with the pretense that modern government is for the good of the majority. Yep. Although, ironically, they did it with populism, which is why I've been trying to tell people that populism is always a scam, no matter who does it, you dumb fucks. All right. Anyway. Literally freezing his own crypto bro supporters for easy money. I mean, 70% asset growth, people. They resolved the legitimation crisis of the U.S. state by simply discarding the notion of legitimacy. We don't need legitimacy anymore. Fuck it. That's where we're at. Neither party is much of a mass party anymore. Nope. Even if Democrats do well in the next election, their brand continues to tank. The Republican brand has not improved much either. And that's when people are voting less and less for third-party candidates than they did in the 20th century. So who fucking knows? Everyone's voting for people they don't believe in and don't like. All the references to the late Soviet Union seem apt, except they're probably too insulting to the late Soviet Union. They don't represent the diverse interests of the people to forge a compromise with big business. They present diverse interests of corporations and investors to the people. And they're trying to do it by backdoor influencing schemes too on both the left and the right. People admit it with the right, but they're in denial about it in the left, or they'll say that that's what we need to do to fight the right because, the left needs real money without realizing they're going to ask the same things. The people giving you the money are going to ask the same things with the Democrats as they do with Republicans, you fucking morons. They are more like the shambolic blobs of campaign staffers. Advocacy organizations, political action committees, media personalities, think tanks, dark money, 501cs, billionaire donors, small contributors, hordes of consultants competing to siphon off some of the money flowing through it all. And the whole thing is more akin to a buzzing swarm of insects gnawing away at a dead animal, although that may be unfair to the bugs and to the dead animal. And if the UK is our sign, what we get from the Democrats is probably going to be like a worse version of Trump 0.1, as Starmer seems like like a slightly more tone deaf version of the Tories of a decade and a half prior. Corbyn may lead a third party, but Nigel Farage's just most likely to benefit. It's time to get real, people. You've wasted 20 years on bullshit. Enough is enough. Protect your peace.